When it comes to self-development, no matter the method you use, the vital point is to practice. If you're ready to transform your life and claim the potential inside of you, you're in the right place. Welcome back to The Vital Point. I'm your host, Jonathan Schecter. As a transformation coach and breathwork facilitator, I'm invested in making the dynamic landscape of personal evolution accessible. My goal is to inspire you to take action for yourself. You have the capacity to evolve and bring your intentions and dreams into the world, and there's never been more access to so many incredible modalities that can help you on your journey. This podcast will help you learn simple methods you can use to transform your life and share the stories of practitioners who are doing the work so that you feel inspired to go and practice, because that's the vital point. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a 5-star review. It's an easy, free way to support the show and help more people discover these simple, life-changing practices. My guest on today's show is the return of Erin Doumert. Erin is a religious trauma recovery guide, psychedelic integration specialist, and somatic experiencing coach. She was first on the podcast on episode 27, so 60 episodes ago, when we were both going through Beth Weinstein's mastermind coaching program. And I happened to run into her a couple of times at the MAPS Psychedelic Science Conference earlier this year. And I'm just thrilled to have had the opportunity to do another podcast with her. This episode was just a delightful conversation that goes into a lot of things that both Erin and I are very passionate about. We start out talking about somatic experiencing, and the episode opens with a wonderful somatic practice that will help you be present and drop into the conversation. And then as we continue to talk about somatics and somatic awareness, somatic experiencing, we gently kind of tangent into talking about psychedelic integration and how having a regulated nervous system, having somatic awareness, and just having a grounded, present experience can really help to deepen and enrich not only just life in general, but especially the psychedelic process. One of my takeaways as I re-listened to this episode was just how important a regulated nervous system is for life in general, and especially when you're working with psychedelics and plant medicines. For me, one of the most helpful tools for that regulation is breathwork. The breath is so connected to the nervous system. It's one of the most direct ways that we can work with and change our nervous system state. If you're ready to learn how to unlock this resource so that you can get more out of your plant medicine work, I'm currently taking new clients for my 6-week Breathwork for Integration coaching container, and you can find more information on that on the show page or at bluemagicalchemy.com. Erin, so good to have you back on the Vital Point podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan, for having me back. So excited for this conversation.
You reminded me that the first time we talked, we were actually on IG Live. So it's definitely been a while. And I think we both agree it's so much nicer just to have this conversation not in a live environment and just be able to relax into it a little bit, right?
Right. Like we were co-regulating before you pressed record, and it was like, oh, we can like drop in before we drop in, and it felt really good.
Speaking of nervous system activation and just dropping in, not only the two of us, but the audience that's listening or watching, you have offered to graciously lead us into just a nice little opening practice.
Yeah. So, unless you're driving, I'd recommend
Right.
not to do this practice. But if you're at home and you're just chilling, or maybe you're walking out on the park, on the street, you can even just stop and do this practice too. But really, this practice is to get us into our parasympathetic nervous system. And so we're constantly going and moving and engaged in work and conversations, and maybe we're like in survival mode or whatever. And so this can really help us drop in. So let's just take a few breaths together. So go ahead and breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. So if you are in a space, if you're sitting or standing, just go ahead and bring your attention to your feet and notice where they are. Like, can you bring your weight to one side of your foot, to one of your feet, and then your weight over to the other side of your foot, and just kind of like play around with shifting your weight from one foot to the other. And as you do this, just notice what you notice within your body. What shifts? What changes when you bring your awareness down into your feet? Shifting from one side to the other. And then let's come to a pause and gently just open your eyes. And I'm going to have you bring 2 fingers out in front of you. And keeping your eyes straight, you're going to bring both of your fingers out to your peripheral vision and bring them out to your peripheral vision until you can just barely see them out of the corners of your eyes. And then once you've gotten that range, you can go and bring your hands down, and keeping that open awareness of your eyes, that extended state, go ahead and just like gaze your room, gaze your environment, wherever you may be. Just start to look around and notice with childlike curiosity. You know, children don't see messes, they don't see organization, they just see things and objects. And really encourage you to do a 360 view of what your surrounding. Maybe even looking behind you, if you have anything behind you. Up above, if you're outside, you maybe see trees or the sky, clouds. Or down below. And just notice what you notice. And again, with no judgment, just start to begin noticing where your eyes are drawn. What are they naturally drawn to without any judgment? So my eyes automatically went to this like red pillow that I have on my floor, and it says love on it. I'm like, oh, that makes me feel like really good. And my friend got that for me and just makes me feel connected. And like, I have friends who love me.
Nice. Yeah.
What were your eyes drawn to? And then as you begin to notice, like I can ask the audience, like, how does your body feel now compared to when you first turned on this podcast? What shifts do you notice? Yeah. And this is just bringing us into this parasympathetic nervous system, this state of rest and digest, or this state of non-arousal. And this is really where we can be socially engaged with others. So I know sometimes, like, if we're going to go into like a social setting, or we're going to go to a grocery store, we want to connect with our friends or our partners or our family. This is the space, being in the parasympathetic nervous system, where we can like really like engage with each other and like really connect and be fully present in the here and now, to like feel our feelings and feel what's happening and being able to express them and communicate them, because being open and vulnerable is how we connect with one another. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I feel ready to drop in and just feel nice and present. And I get so excited, like experiencing other people's energy and the way that they lead that practice, because it's something that I do myself like all the time because of our shared training in somatic experiencing. But it's also something I'm like working with clients all the time. Like, even if there's nothing else that I can help them with as far as like trauma, it's like, okay, but you have to do this thing, like, and so I really love being able to experience other people's energy and nervous system and like the way that they lead that practice. That not only is it just nice to like do it in a slightly different way, but I'm always like learning something too. Like I love that you brought in the peripherals on the eyes and focusing on, feeling your feet. That's such a good way to just start to feel that safety in the body, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're constantly again going and moving and like we're up here a lot. Like we're like using our hands, we're using our brains, we're always like, what's the next thing that we need to do, that we forget to ground in. Like our feet are so important. They move us. They're like they get us from point A to point B, and we don't even really recognize the power that the feet have of just grounding us in to being present in this here and now.
Yeah, and it's something that like I use as a resource for myself, and I'm often inviting people to just really notice how their feet feel because um like it's so easy to get caught up in like the feelings of activation in the body, like especially like I know not everybody feels this way, but it seems like a pretty common thing that we feel like a lot of anxiety or stress or activation like in the stomach. And if we're not aware that there are places in the body that maybe feel a little bit more neutral or even pleasant, like it's almost like that feeling in the belly can start to spread and like feels like it's our whole experience. And so it's so neat to just be like, okay, like, yeah, that's there and we're going to attend to that. But like, what are your feet like right now? And they're like, oh, wait, actually, this feels different. It's like, yeah, like the whole world isn't falling apart into anxiety. Like, amazing.
Yeah, exactly. When we can
So,
like go to these spaces that feel yummy and feel good, that's where the healing lies. When people are like, oh, you do trauma work, it automatically, like, it's kind of scary at first. When I was like, even when I first started learning about trauma, I was like, ooh, I don't know, like, that seems really intense, or, that seems scary, or that seems like it's going to be a lot of work. And like, yeah, it is a lot of work and it can be scary and it can, bring up a lot of stuff. But also at the same time, if we focus on the trauma itself or on the event itself, sometimes like we're not really going to really go anywhere or really heal that place. What we really want to do is concentrate on how to establish safety within ourselves and in our bodies. How can we establish safety from the event? How can we find the places that we felt safe in that trauma or in that event? Because what happens is when we're traumatized, it's not that we, as it's not the event, it's how our bodies processed the event, because it just happened too fast, too soon.
right.
So when we are working on a traumatic event, we're like going like really slow, and we're talking about, tell me about the day. Talk to me about what happened before the event. Tell me what happened after the event. Like let's find some like juicy, yummy areas that make us feel good in our bodies of like, oh yeah, that's right. I totally forgot that one guy or that one person, they like held me afterwards and we hugged, and I totally forgot about that. It's like, oh yeah, let's visit that moment that felt really yummy and really good for our nervous systems. Our nervous systems didn't catch that. It was like too quick. So let's like sit there and really take that in that moment, that was a resource for you. That was like a good moment during that event, because our body needed that. Our body was craving that. It was craving these moments that were there that we just couldn't take in, because it either was like, when we're traumatized, like it happens too fast, too soon. So our bodies go into this like reactive mode, right? So it either goes into, well, first, what we want to do is we want to try to run away from an event if something happens. So automatically we want to just like run, or avoid, or like maybe this didn't really happen. And if we can't run away from an event, like if we got in a car accident or we fell down something, or we were emotionally abused as a child, or, there's lots of different things we just couldn't run away from, then we would try to fight, right? And so sometimes we can't really fight, like we're in public and we're not going to try to fight the person who hit our car. Like, we're not going to do that. Or, if you're a child and you're being emotionally abused or sexually abused, we can't really fight our perpetrators. And so what's the next thing we do? We go into freeze. And so it's like this state of high arousal, our whole body, our nervous system just shuts down. And so, I really like to just nourish that freeze state of hey, that was something that your body really needed to do. And can we just honor that? Honor that space of being frozen for a little bit and just kind of be there. And
Yeah.
yeah, so um I could go on and on about this stuff, but the when we can just give our bodies the space and the time, and our nervous systems the space and the time to really process these experiences, that's where we can really heal. So
Yeah, and just I think it's like really important what you just mentioned, that like all of the ways that the nervous system protects and helps support us are so valid and so precious, really. And when you started to talk about the freeze state, it reminded me. So just for the audience, like in case you missed it the first time, both Erin and I are doing the somatic experiencing professional practitioner, whatever you want to call it, training at the moment. She's a year ahead of me. And one of the things that you have to do in addition to these trainings is you have to do like personal sessions and case consults and things with somebody that's already, certified. And um, one of the things that the practitioner that I've been working with had suggested to me after beginning two, because there's 3 different beginning trainings, was I wonder what it would be like to just let yourself be frozen for like 5 minutes a day. And it was really, really challenging at first. Because my mind starts to go into like this sort of like mindfulness, like meditation kind of mode, instead of just like literally just shutting off and like just letting myself be there. But what I've noticed as I've continued to practice is it's brought more attention and awareness to those times where I am going into a freeze, right? Because like, yeah, you mentioned these 3 really powerful, like kind of, we could call them like really extreme states, right? But it's not all, like sometimes they're blended together, or sometimes we're just feeling a little bit of, you know, that fight. Like we're not gonna like start a bar brawl, but like maybe we're just like, oh, like I want to hit that guy, or like I want to, like I can feel my hands clench up into fists, right? Or I can just I've like I'll notice like all of a sudden like, something just feels different here, and I'll like really like open into it and just like open into that free state. And that'll happen to me sometimes when I'm leaving the treatment center, like, and I think I'm settled, like like my last session is maybe like an hour earlier. I've done my notes, I've had time to breathe and to kind of ground, and I'll be like, okay, I'm fine. And then I go out to my car and start driving, and I'm like, oh no, you're still you're still frozen. Because I can see it in the way that I'm like experiencing the world, and this vista, this view that I see every time I drive out of this place, right? And I'm like, wait, what feels different here? Oh, that's what it is. I'm still trying to avoid that thing that happened earlier, like in session.
totally, 100%. Freeze is my default mode. I'm notorious. I just go frozen or I go completely blank. And I love that you just put like what you've been learning about this is this awareness, because I also now am bringing awareness of my own freeze point of like if a conversation with friends gets a little like uncomfortable, my brain literally just shuts off. And I just happened the other day, a friend was like, wait, what was your response to that? And I was like, I'm shut down right now. Like I can't even respond to you. And just bringing awareness to it, I like am no longer embarrassed about it. I'm just like, I can't
Right.
respond because I'm in this state. And I find that when I am more open about it with people, it's like, oh, they have more compassion and they have a little bit more understanding, or they're a little bit more, um, just gentle and like, oh, okay, maybe we just need to take a pause for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's nothing to be ashamed of, right? Like we do have these weird stigmas, or like sort of like we kind of shy away from it, and like maybe like mainstream society of like, oh, it's not okay to run, or you don't want to be shut down. But like literally this is just how the nervous system works, and it's a really beautiful system that has kept humanity going for however many, thousands or millions of years you want to, talk about, and it's kept you safe and alive to this very point. Like no matter what you've gone through, um adverse, challenging, traumatic, whatever it is, like you've made it to this point, and that's a beautiful thing. And part of the reason that you've made it to this point is these beautiful, beautiful things in the nervous system, right? It's really amazing, like that. I'm finding it really amazing, the process of just like learning and getting more in tune to the nervous system, and just that awareness that continues to develop.
Yes. Yes. All. And what I like is like the beginning one is all about learning about the nervous system and nervous system regulation and tracking the nervous system. And then as you we go further along, it's really quite beautiful when we start to work with um, SE, somatic experiencing, because it's more than just, yes, it is the nervous system where we're tracking it, but it's literally like bringing our body, mind, soul all connected together. Like we're going into like inner child work stuff,
Yeah.
So like it's really like, hey, this happened to you as a child, and let's go back into that space. Like our subconscious is going back into this time where whatever happened, um, our nervous system remembers, right? So even though it happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, our body thinks it just happened. So what's
Yeah.
really nice is that I can sit there with a client, okay, tell me the first time that you've ever felt this way or noticed this, and then a memory will pop up. Oh, this happened when I was 5. I remember this. And I was like,
Right.
great. As you remember what happened to you when you're 5, what's happening in your nervous system now?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we're able to heal what we couldn't heal then. Because what happens when we were like 5 years old, or even pre-verbal, before we could even talk, um, we didn't have the capacity to hold these big emotions or to process these things that are happening to us. Our little nervous systems just like really can't handle it. If our caregiver wasn't around, or our mom went to take a shower for 5 minutes and we're laying on the ground crying, like that's traumatizing. And
Right.
so our bodies always still remember. So, sometimes our sessions is literally just like rocking, as if we were like being rocked from our mother. And that's all that we needed in that moment. And we didn't even know our nervous system needed this. And, or, hey, if you could have done something in that moment, what would you have rather have done? And we can like shift and change the perception of whatever the event was when we were children, or however that goes. So it's like we're doing shadow work, we're doing inner child work, we're doing sometimes parts work will come up, like, oh,
Right.
and it's just such a beautiful unfolding, like we can't think our way out of trauma. We have to feel our way out of trauma. And um, and it's, I love TikTok, and I love like seeing all these like somatic practitioners on like Instagram, and like, dancing their way out of trauma and like dancing their way through stuff. And I think it's just so great. But I also want to just like emphasize that like those are awesome. Like I've had amazing experiences on the dance floor or like at a static dance where like emotions are coming up. And I think it's great to process emotions, but to like heal trauma is where that like one-on-one container comes in with like a skilled practitioner like with you or I can really get to those little parts that we can't see, or like just somebody to help and guide us and show us like these little tools to really fully process these like big responses, these threatening responses that we have. So
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. There's something else that you said that I want to go back to, but
okay, yeah.
like I just want to touch on that because you named something that also aggravates me from time to time on social media where like yes, hopefully we can all get to the point where like doing this very simple thing like gargling, something like that would be like a resource for the nervous system. And it's really important to mention that like we're all on the spectrum of what we're working with based on our experiences and the state of our nervous system. And it's okay if like you're so dysregulated that gargling isn't going to do one thing or the other for you, or these little like, tips and tricks. Sometimes it's we got to start with like really basic, things. And um, I've been working for the last year at this treatment center, and I was talking about this yesterday. Um, so I have like breathwork groups, and I have like SE type groups, and then like I have one group where we're literally just talking about the nervous system and regulating the nervous system, right? Like it's just like, hey, these are the different branches of the nervous system, and here's how trauma like affects it, right? It's purely educational. This this experience really stuck out to me because it really cemented this what I'm trying to say about like everybody's nervous system being different. In this educational group, there was a resident there. They were I watched them start to get like I could feel them getting like upset, dysregulated, and they left me a note and they left. And they were like, "Hey, this is great information, but it's hitting too close to home right now. Like I can't deal with this in this moment. And I hope I get the chance to like do this again because this is really educational." So not even like, hey, let's do orienting, let's do breathing, let's get into the body and really feel our sensations. Just talking about the nervous system was too much in that moment for their nervous system, right? And I always remember that moment as like a real teaching moment for myself of like it's so important to meet people where they are and not try to like drag them into something that's too advanced or too much for their nervous system too fast, because that's only going to be re-traumatizing, right? Like we're just trying to, I mean, how many times like have you experienced in your life these moments where like you don't really want to do the thing that you're doing, that conversation that you're having, or that thing at work, or that whatever it is, but you make yourself do it for whatever reason, like because you don't want to be embarrassed in front of people, or because it's your job and you're like worried about that. There's so many moments where we're like overriding what the nervous system actually wants to do. And that to me is like one of the beautiful things about somatic experiencing is it's like, no, let's just like, let's listen to this beautiful intelligence of the body and not override. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to be exactly where we are.
Yes, we have to be exactly where we are. And we as practitioners have to meet our clients where they're at too. And, some folks will come to me and so traumatized, but we won't even touch the trauma for months, sometimes a year, because we're
Right.
just regulating and co-regulating and establishing safety within the body and the nervous system. We can't even touch the trauma unless your body and your nervous system is regulated to a point, because if we continue and try to, quote unquote, like heal trauma, we're just going to re-traumatize, because the body or nervous system it doesn't have the capacity to hold those big emotions. So we want to make sure that you can hold that capacity to hold these emotions. Like, what can your body handle right now? How can it regulate in the nervous system right now? What feels good within your body right now? And can we just sit in those yummy parts? Can we sit in the parts that feel good? Because if we can just sit and start to establish safety and feel comfortable in the good parts, then our body will be like, oh, this is safety. I'll bring my own experience as an example. I love my parents. They're amazing. They did an amazing job raising me, but also at the same time, it was like high stress and it was very like high arousal. And so that in my mind was safe for me, constantly being this forensic
Right.
energy. And I remember one of the first, well, I'm going to switch the topic just for a little bit, but I was actually a
Sure.
psychedelic experience where I felt connection and just like this like yumminess, but my nervous system didn't know how to handle it. And I had a panic attack because I was like, wait, I'm in a space of pure calm presence and breathing, and I didn't know what to do. And I started to panic, and it was too much for me. Even in a psychedelic experience, it was too much just to be in this calm environment. And so that's really what we're doing here, right? At first is, hey, what does it feel like to just notice your feet and how it becomes calm? What are the sensations that your body tells you that you're calm? And how can you be with this calmness every day, a little bit by little bit by little bit, so that you can start to establish safety within your nervous system and within your body, and finding that self-trust within yourself so that you can go to those bigger moments and building that capacity. And that's what building capacity is like being able to hold yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And then, like, just to say, like, I've seen so many people in the last year that are like that. Like, you take them into like a real parasympathetic, like breath work practice, like no fast activating breathing, just like, coherence breathing, slowing the breath down, like really dropping into the body. And you'll do it with like a room full of patients, clients, and like 80% of them, 90% of them will be like, oh, I feel so relaxed. I feel calm. Like, wow, like it's been so long since I feel this way. And then there's like the 10% that's like, I'm having a panic attack right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so challenging to kind of like wrap your head around it in the beginning of like, no, you're so used to being so wound up. You're so used to the state of dysregulation that regulation and calm actually feel scary to your body, you know?
Yeah.
And the way that it's made sense to me, and let me know if this resonates to you, because like I'm always looking for good feedback from SE people, right? The way that I try to explain this to people is like, when I have to drive someplace new that I've never been before, and even if I have my Google Maps and I have enough gas, and like there's something in my body that feels like a little bit anxious. Like I don't feel totally settled. I feel a little bit nervous doing that drive. you know? And it's not until I get to where I'm going, I don't even really notice it until I'm driving home sometimes, of like, oh, wait, I feel so much like calmer right now. I don't feel that stress. The ride doesn't seem like it takes so long. And it's like when we drive the car of our nervous system into new neighborhoods, places that we've never been before, it can feel really scary. And then, like, contrast that with the way that you feel driving around your neighborhood. Like, the radio's up, you're kind of on autopilot, you know where you're going, like, you know, all the little landmarks, all the trees, or, you know, for us, the cactus, right? And like, it's a much more relaxed experience because you've been there so many times, right? So even if like you live in some really like ghetto, you know, like kind of dangerous area, that's where you live, and you know what to expect there. So it's totally okay if like as you start to shift the state of the nervous system, whether that's through SE or working with psychedelics or whatever it is that you're doing, that sometimes there's going to be some discomfort and the nervous system's going to be like, where are you taking me? I've never been here before. This is a lot.
Yeah, yeah. We're if we're used to being in survival mode and we've been in survival mode our whole life, that's comfortable. That's safety. Our
Right.
nervous system knows that this high level of cortisol that we produce is considered safety. And so, yeah, coming out of that, it's like, wait a second, this isn't how we've survived our whole life. Like,
Right.
my job is to help you survive and thrive, and this isn't how we've been doing it. And it's a little bit scary to slow down and to be with your breath because we're not like racing or trying to like get through life so quickly.
Right.
But I like that analogy that you just said about the car rides. I'm like, hey, I'm going to steal that. I'm going to talk about that with
Right. Nice.
clients.
Um,
So good.
and I also want to come back to like the psychedelic thing because like, yes, SE, if you ask the average person like, oh, what's somatic experiencing therapy, or you like Googled it and you look into the work of Peter Levine, it is primarily like this method for dealing with trauma, right? And working with trauma. But for me, it's been such an invaluable resource for psychedelic integration because of the like, yes, we are getting to know the the sensations in the nervous system and like when the nervous system's getting activated, when it's going into that survival mode. But the other side of it is like, hey, what's also happening in the body like when you do see something like your pillow that, you know, like that makes you think of your friend, or the plants, or like what's good in your life right now in this moment, like what's good that's there, like let's lean into those really good feelings, those pleasant feelings, those pleasurable feelings as well. And that is such a valuable thing when we're like working in these big expanded states, like not only being able to like notice the good, but also being able to hold and having the capacity to let these ripples or these like big seismic waves of sensation that can happen, like let them unfold in the way that they're doing, right? Because like that's one of the things that psychedelics are doing is they're dysregulating us. Like, I mean, how many? I can't think of too many big psychedelic experiences that are like regulated and like calm, and you know, like there's big things happening, whether they're like they feel really scary or they feel really ecstatic. But just being able to like hold and experience those in a much deeper, richer way.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I feel like again, I'm going to speak on my own experience with psychedelics. And this is so interesting. And I think this is why I've like found my path through helping folks in the psychedelic space, and also just healing trauma is I've been traumatized in psychedelic spaces. And I think that like a lot of
Right.
people don't actually talk about this,
Mm-hmm.
of like the container wasn't set up right, or my boundaries were crossed. and I just didn't like step up or say anything. And when I come out, I am completely dysregulated, and I'm just like, what just happened? And I didn't know what to do. Nobody, like, no one talk, like, I don't see many people talking about it very much. And how do you heal from trauma in the psychedelic space? And for me, it just through, I was just activated inside, and I didn't, and it was, everything was just happening too quickly, too fast, and um all the things. So if I had known that SC was a thing way back in the day when I was like experimenting and probably wasn't finding the best facilitators, um, I would have gone to an SC practitioner to help me regulate again, because those can be jarring when we are in spaces that are not the safest.
Not only that, but like not only not the safest, but there's this stigma around it. There's this like this judgment of like, oh, you know, there's no such thing as a bad trip. Like it's happening for a reason. Like you're getting judged. You're not being supported by peers oftentimes when we're
Yeah.
sharing these traumas that have occurred in the medicine space. And it's, I mean, it's bullshit. You know, it's like saying like, oh, you know, that car crash wasn't that bad. Like wait till you see why like spirit did that for you. You know, like you're just not seeing the benefits of, you know, like that car crash happened for a reason, you know, like, and like things like that. It's like, because it's happening in this expanded psychedelic state, somehow it's not valid to people as a trauma, where it's like, no. Like hold on a second. Like, we just need to back that up and unpack that, because what you said is not trauma informed. It's not supportive to the person that experienced it. And it's not preventing these type of situations from occurring again in the future.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you touched onto that, because it's true. And I was trying to find people to help me unpack what had happened. I got the same, well, what did you get out of that? What do you think your lesson was? What do you think this and that? And I'm like,
Right.
I'm like struggling right now. And, you know, if somebody just sat me down and was like, walk me through the whole scenario and tell me what happened, it would have been like, oh, well, your boundaries were crossed. Of course this happened. Or, oh,
Right.
it wasn't set up correctly. Of course that happened. And like, let's slow down for a second, sit with your nervous system and allow your nervous system to do what it wants to do. And it took a while for me to heal that anxiety that I had afterwards, because probably not until I started getting more and more into somatic experiencing was like, finally, oh my gosh, regulating my nervous system. It feels so much better. But yeah, I think that it's not trauma informed. A lot of the spaces are, you know, with good intentions. I
Sure.
think that, you know, like, what was your lesson? What did you learn? What is spirit trying to like communicate to you? And what is spirit trying to communicate to the facilitator when things like this happen? Is my question for that.
Mm. Mm.
What happens when
Mm-hmm.
somebody in your container gets traumatized? What does that mean? Why are we putting it on the participants and not, you know, asking the question to the facilitator?
Yeah. And there is this interesting thing, like, at least for me, where when I do SE or other trauma work, I might be able to get to a place where I find a lesson, or I find like some sort of like benefit from that experience, like where it's that experience gets alchemized into like, oh, like for me, it really inspired me to want to start studying SE and like doing more trauma work with people, right? Because I was like, holy crap, like this is the hardest thing that I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I feel pretty resourced. Like I have a meditation practice, like I'm seeing a therapist,
Yeah.
like I know how to do breath work. I know all these things, and I'm still like barely keeping my head above water. What are people that don't have any resources doing? Like what
Yeah.
is going on in the world,
Yeah.
right? So yes, there was that, but that was my journey. It was my healing. It was my exploration. And I remember being really upset when people would say, well, everything happens for a reason. And I used to be one of those people. that was like, there's no such thing as a bad trip, you know, like you're just resistant to the challenges, and like that's just you shutting down and being resistant. And like I would never ever 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 say that today, you know, like I've realized how wrong that is. And I also have compassion for the people that have never experienced trauma, and so they still think that way of like, oh, there's no such thing as a bad trip, you know, there's challenging situations and hard lessons to learn, blah blah blah. But it's not okay. Like I have compassion for them. I'm not like, fuck you, you know, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, actually, hold on, we deserve to be more educated and more trauma informed in these spaces, because I don't want what happened to me or to you or to my partner to, or anybody else, right, to happen to anybody else. Our colleague that we went through Beth Weinstein's program with, Katrina Michelle, like she's, you know, a part of this big research project about adverse effects in the psychedelic space. More and more people are coming out and like voicing the traumas that they've experienced. That's the way that we're going to change this, you know, is talking about it, is education. And like, and I really, this is the last thing I'll say about it, like, especially now in this quote unquote renaissance that we're going through, where psychedelics are becoming so much more mainstream, and there is so much potential for healing and for growth of like humanity as a whole. The last thing that we need is somebody going through these like a seriously traumatic event and stopping the momentum that a lot of other people are getting in a safer, more regulated container.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up, and I love everything that you just said. And I couldn't agree more. Here's the thing: psychedelics are new to us in the Western world, right? It's been held in a tradition and been um, uh, held with secrecy and from the indigenous for so long. The indigenous are so connected and regulated because they live with the rhythm of nature, they live with the rhythm of the earth. And here in the Westerns, we're all traumatized. Like most of us, I'd say, are traumatized. And so we have to be very careful when we're using these medicines because, yeah, the indigenous have been using them for thousands of years, and it does have potential for healing trauma. It's healed so much trauma within myself and within my family and within my clients and so many people I know. And also, it has potential for re traumatizing somebody who doesn't have the capacity to hold those big emotions. So, you know, when I have clients that are coming to me who are like, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to go to Bufo, or I'm going to sit with Aya, or I'm going to do mushrooms or whatever, like the preparation process is really regulating. Like what is your
Right.
nervous system doing? Hey, do you already have panic attacks? Do you have history of panic attacks? Do you have anxiety? Like tell me about it. And also, do all of your parts know? So I know we haven't covered parts or like IFS, but if anybody's listening, they can just do a quick Google search of internal family systems. But like all of your different parts within yourself, are they all in agreement of what's going on? And like, hey, there's this one part is like, no, I'm scared. Let's talk to that part and let's try to get an okay from that part too. Because I think that it's just like, it's all very new. And we hear so many different experiences and people's experiences online, or this podcast, or this or that, or my friend went to
Right.
Costa Rica and yada, yada, yada. And it's beautiful. I just want to make sure that everyone's doing it safely. You know,
Yeah.
I've told people I don't think it's a good idea that they do it because of their state of where their nervous system is. And I always get people say, like, thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you for saying that I'm not a good candidate. At least not yet, not right now. I don't think it's a good idea. I would never tell anybody to do it or not do it. It's just my opinion. I'm not a licensed professional. But yeah, that's my take on it. Is just we have to be very, very mindful of these and like yes, we're doing them in reverence and like honoring the indigenous and the way that they've been doing it for thousands of years, and also having to like marry that with our society and how we're dysregulated we are.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for saying that. Yeah, and I think it goes back to like a big foundation in somatic experiencing, which is titration, right?
Mm.
Like if you go to a somatic experiencing practitioner or therapist and you're like, I had this big trauma, like just like you said, like it might be quite a few sessions of establishing trust, of establishing regulation before you're diving into the middle of that trauma, right? You're not just like, oh, sit down and we're going to start working through that, right? So, in the same way, like maybe you are interested in working with very powerful medicines like Aya or Bufo or psilocybin. What is wrong with starting to learn how to be present in your body, how to regulate your nervous system? We could even take you into like a breathwork
Yeah.
practice or a somatic experiencing experience that's going to bring a little bit of activation so that you get used to what happens when you're in an expanded state, in a very titrated and a controlled way, rather than like, you know once you drink that medicine, once you take that medicine, you can't get off the ride, like you're there, it's happening, right? As opposed to somebody's like, this breath work feels too expansive, I'm gonna like bring my breath back and come back into my body in a few minutes, right? Like there's nothing wrong with titrating the experience. You've got your whole life to explore and to experience, and having a traumatic experience isn't going to like make that happen any faster or make you trust it anymore. And I've also had a similar experience to you, Erin, where like trauma in the medicine space, and then it's taken a lot of time for my nervous system to trust being in that expanded state again, right? Because the nervous system goes, well, the last time we were here, this was really, really like dangerous and scary. We're not going back here again, you know? So, yeah, like titration is so important. And what's interesting is like going through the SE training has actually made me question some of this, not the psychedelic experiences that I've had, but like my work going forward. Cause it's like, well, wait a minute. Like I was super dysregulated. I was like really out of my body. What would it be like to approach the medicine work in a more titrated way, in a way where I can be more present? And I'm curious to hear what you think about this, but like for me, I feel like I've gotten a lot more therapeutic benefit out of those more grounded experiences rather than like, let me see if I can eat as many mushrooms as I can possibly, or like go up for a third cup of ayahuasca, or like things like that. Like it's really amazing to be able to feel like I'm going deeper and with less medicine because I'm more embodied during the experience.
I love that you're bringing this up so much. I think that is such an important thing to touch on. And I think as fellow psychonaut, at the beginning when we first start doing psychedelics, I think it's this like, how many mushrooms can I do? How many
Right.
ayahuasca ceremonies can I take? Like, how far can I take this? Like, and like you said, like the third cup or the third drink or whatever. And like, the more medicine I do, the less I need. And so when I am in a ceremony, like I really don't need that much. It's like, and I get just as good a benefit as I would have if I would have gone up for my third large cup, right? And so, and it's more about like grounding in, tuning in, allowing the medicine to it's still very present. It's still very like aware. It's still very healing, and you have the choice and the discernment inside these expanded states of consciousness. for an example, I was in Costa Rica, and there's a saying: if you drink ayahuasca, like just listen to the medicine; she'll tell you, or the ayahuasca will tell you if it wants you to go back for a second cup or whatever. And I'm always a little like concerned about like how far I want to go. And I, had taken like my one medium size cup, maybe a little bit more than medium. And like an hour in goes, and they're like, okay, we're going to open the offering again, whoever feels called. And I remember like at this time, there was like all of these like bears, like these bears that were like back to back, and they're all like circling each other, and they're all like, drink more ayahuasca, drink more ayahuasca, drink more ayahuasca, like going in this circle. And I was like, no, I don't want to. And I was like, I said no to ayahuasca. And I almost, like, a part of me felt guilty. Like I was saying no to mom, like, might be in trouble for saying
Yeah.
no.
Right.
And there wasn't any trouble. There was just like, okay. And I went into the universe, and I still had an insane experience. Just because I didn't go back for a second cup doesn't mean that I missed out on anything. I still healed exactly what I needed to heal in that space. And I think that's like what I think I try to tell people is like, you literally are the co-creator of this experience. Like, you can say no to what's happening. You can be like, this is too much. I want to shift, please. Like, oh, I need to go outside, and I need to put my hands on the ground and breathe and ask ayahuasca for a break. I need to, there's so many different things. And also, or not, and just let the medicine take you wherever you want to take you. That's the beautiful part of it, of being a co-creative space, is that you have the ability to go wherever you really want to.
Yeah. Beautifully said. And you can always take more.
And you can always take more.
You can't take less.
No.
You can't take it back.
No.
Just like, I think I agree with you. Like, there is this, I know I've had like that urge, especially like in my earlier, years of working with medicine, of like, I want to keep pushing the boundaries. Like, I want to keep going further. And, just nowadays, like, just reminding myself like that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yep.
And like, there's been plenty of times where like I had, a journey planned, and then something just that day or that week, just something didn't feel right. Like, I wasn't in a good space, or, like a bunch of drama had happened. And again, I used to just override that. Like, screw it, I'm just going in, like the medicine will sort it out, And now I'm like, no, like the medicine will still be there. Like, I don't need to put myself through this experience.
Yeah, there's another experience every weekend that I'm sure you can
Right.
find a journey somewhere at one weekend or another. And I just have to and it's being regulated, it's being grounded, it's being aware. It's like, oh, healing can also be gentle. Healing can also be sweet. And it doesn't have to be this get after it and go experience. It can be slow, it can be soft, it can be gentle, it can be sweet. And just like really sitting with that, and also holding that prayer too before I go. I just like, can we be gentle? Can we be sweet? Can we be like, can everything just be shown in like cartoon, please? And it is.
And sometimes, like, in those expanded states, the really subtle things that happen are like the most corrective, right? And that's why I think one reason that SE is so effective is like, you have somebody there that's fully present and holding space and really co-regulated with you, and is that like that empathetic witness. And I've experienced that. Like, I have a friend, we met in an ayahuasca ceremony, and like after the ceremony was done, we were sitting in the facilitator's backyard, and I don't know exactly what happened, but like we went to get up and go back in the house, and I like he looked like he was stumbling, and I like grabbed his arm and kind of like helped him back in. And he's told me like several times like how healing and corrective that was, just like that simple act of like presence and kindness. And I'm always like, hey, thanks for sharing that. I'm glad that you got something out of it. Like, I wasn't sitting there going, I'm going to heal this guy from his trauma. It was just like, he needed a hand, you know, like I literally didn't think anything of it. But so, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, you never know how those really subtle experiences, like how profound they can be. It's not just about these big macro things. Oftentimes it's like the very little details that are really healing and corrective in a beautiful way.
Absolutely. There's so much in just in the subtle details, like you were saying. I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting when we started this. We're like, we're going to talk about SE,
I
and then it
know.
went right into psychedelics.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's you know, I mean, to me they're so linked. Like I started
100%.
doing SE like as a way for integration. Um like literally after the first ayahuasca ceremony I did, we were sitting in the backyard in the morning, and someone was like talking about their experience, and I was like, what is that? Like, how do you work with that? Because I'm having that. And they were like, oh, this is like this thing that I do called somatic experiencing. It's really great for integration. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna go check that out, you know? And and then like actually like I had already been working with my practitioner for a while when I had this shock trauma. And so just to have traumas that I've experienced and like been able to go in like right away with somebody, whether that's coming out of anesthesia after a surgery, or and like a challenging psychedelic experience, or the shock trauma, or getting fired. Oh my god, I got fired like unexpectedly, and literally like they did it on the way out to go to my SE appointment. And so like I got to like process and like complete that whole process that literally it was like less than an hour old. And it was so powerful, like just being because it was so fresh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like it's so wonderful to be able to heal these like childhood things, these things that have been happening, like the patterns that were established when we were like in early development, right? But there's something about that freshness that's like, oh, it's potent.
So good. And
Yeah.
also, another thing I wanted to note is, sometimes the psychedelic space, the healing isn't complete inside that uh, container. So like it can like show you something that happened in childhood, and then the next thing you know, it's gone, and now you're into something else, and it's like, whoa.
Right.
Wait, what happened to me? And so then, I'll go to an SE, or I've had clients come to me, hey, I did ketamine, or I did this and I did that, and it showed me that I was this, that, and the other happened, said event. And like, and I don't know what to do now with this information. Well, now it's an opportunity to integrate it or heal it. And really, what I found is like my SE sessions with my clients, my somatic experiencing sessions with my clients are so powerful. We get into these altered states of awareness, just like we do sometimes in psychedelic space. Like
Yeah.
visions are coming up, images are coming up, like colors are coming up, and some deep healing is happening in these SE sessions that otherwise weren't happening in the psychedelic space for whatever reason. But
Right.
it was an opportunity to like, here's this information. Now go and let's work on it. Let's heal it.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I am like, I'm, I'm really regretting we have a hard stop because this is like such a good, juicy conversation. And I feel like we could keep going. But I know we both have hard stops. So thank you so much. Like, this has been so wonderful. We'll have to do a part 3,
Yeah.
at some point and keep it going.
Thank you so much for having me, Jonathan. This is a really good combo.
Yeah.
Enjoyed
And,
it.
yeah, so for folks that want to get a hold of you, want to work with you, like, where should they go?
They should just go onto my website, erindoumert.com, and just click apply to work with me. And even if you're wanting to do psychedelics or not, you know, it doesn't matter. Just click to apply and I'll reach out to you.
Well, thanks so much. Like I said, we'll have to set up a part 3 at some point. And it was so great to run into you at the MAPS conference.
Absolutely.
Really, really grateful that we were able to connect in person and kind of close the circle with this podcast here today. I sincerely hope you found value and inspiration in this episode. If it struck a chord with you, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to leave the show a review. It's a simple, cost-free way to show support and help more like-minded people discover the show. Also, make sure you sign up for my newsletter at bluemagicalchemy.com to be the first to get updates, exclusive content, and insights delivered straight to your inbox. It's a fantastic way to stay connected and keep the learning journey going. And when you sign up, I'll send you a free guide to using Breathwork for integration as a way to show my gratitude for your support. We'll put Erin's information on the show page. You can connect with her on Instagram at Erin Doumert or at her website, erindoumert.com. Remember, it's not about the method you choose or the pace at which you travel. The vital point is to consistently show up for yourself and practice. Thanks again for tuning in. Until our next episode, keep exploring, keep growing, and above all, keep practicing, because that's the vital point.